Thank you for being here. Thank you for signing up for this. I really appreciate it. It's a topic that's of interest to me at the moment, has been for some time, and it seems like it's an interesting topic to different people that I've been talking to. And indeed, this webinar. Now, this webinar I've got close to 300 registrations for this webinar. So clearly, it is a topic of interest to many, many people. And it's about the trying to explore that question and address some of the confusion perhaps and the uncertainty around what the developmental path for an ACT practitioner looks like. And it's understandable that this confusion and these curiosities show up. If you don't know me, my name is Jim Lucas. I'm an ACT therapist, trainer, consultant, writer. And I am what's called an ACBS peer-reviewed trainer, which just means I've gone through a sort of a review process within the training community there. And I'm also currently serving as the ACBS training committee chair. So I've got an interest in training, as you can hear and see. And so I've been speculating, why might you be interested in this webinar? And this is the sort of thing I'm coming up with, that it is confusing for us. And it's confusing because there's no certification or accreditation process in ACT, like there is in many other therapies. And something happens when there is a certification process, that we go through it, we get that qualification at the end of it, and we feel like there's something credible that we now have. Like we feel like we've passed some significant milestone where someone else has said to us, yes, you're now certified. Um, and and some of that training can be a very thorough process. We have lots of short courses. Lots of people come in to ACT, they'll do a beginner's course, maybe a 2-day thing. Um, Quite often, we'll then do another beginner's course, maybe even a third beginner's course, as we just try to figure out like where we're at and what we're doing. And there are a few longer form programs. Um, there are a couple of exceptions. I know Ricky Kjelgaard runs one in Denmark. Um, there's been one run in Ireland before, and I know a few other people that have run various kind of staged programs like built into separate parts. Um, but I guess the advantage with a longer form program is that you get a clearer sense of like where you're starting, how you're developing, where you're going. One of the other challenges is it might not be easy to find an ACT focused supervisor. Um, there might just not be somebody around. Cost might be a prohibitor or a barrier. Um, and it might be unclear about how you measure your knowledge and your skills. There are competency measures around, but it might not be widespread popular knowledge as to what those things are. And one question I hear quite a lot is, when can I call myself an ACT therapist? Like, how will I know when that's legitimate? When it's okay for me to call myself that? So I think this is some of our background, and feel free to put anything in the chat that you think, if there are any other reasons, like anything else you think um, adds to this confusion, like anything else that was showing up for you about why you wanted to come on this webinar. Um, we're really interested to hear those kind of motivations. Okay, so if this is our background, what I've been thinking about and want to share with you is a developmental path. Okay, so what I've been thinking about based on the different training and supervision that I've been offering over however long a period of time, is what are the sort of stages that I notice people going through? And so where I'm at with this at the moment is a sort of five-stage model. And I think a place that we all begin quite often is a place where we find ourselves beginning to be curious about um, the ACT model. Now, I remember the first time I came across ACT was when I worked in an NHS service, a National Health Service psychotherapy service in the West Midlands. And I came into my office after a therapy session where I was employed as a CBT therapist. And on my desk was a journal, the cognitive behavioral therapist, and a post-it note stuck on it saying, read this, and a specific article within it. And it was about the tug of war exercise. And so I read this tug of war exercise. The note had been left by my supervisor, my mentor at the time. And she said, what do you think? Shall we give it a go? Because we were running this um, anxiety group at the time, this CBT for long-term anxiety sufferers. Um, what I remember is my usual tentative self showing up in that moment and going, "Oh, it looks interesting, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this will work, how this will go down." And so she kept encouraging me, and then we decided to give it a go. And I remember, and I imagine many of you are familiar with the tug of war exercise, and I remember this gentleman volunteering to do it with me, and he had been suffering from anxiety for a long time. And as he was pulling on this rope, um, he eventually, like most people do, got to that point where he realized that he could drop the rope, that he didn't have to keep struggling with it. And when he did, what I remember distinctly is the change in his facial expression and his posture and his face filling with sadness. And it seemed like it was palpable in the room. And I felt something intense and strong as well. And what I noticed from that point right in there was that this seemed to be a bit different to what I had discovered before. It felt like there was an emotional depth that was happening within this work and this exercise. It felt like there was a color coming into the work where it had felt maybe quite sort of heady and grey up to that point. And so that really sparked my curiosity. And we all have our different ways that we discover it, the different ways that someone's introduced it to us or how we've happened upon it. And one of the things that I think people like remain interested and continue to find out more about ACT is that it speaks to them in some way. Like that moment spoke to me. And so I'm also curious here, like, what do you remember was your first introduction to the ACT model? Do you remember how you first came across it? Maybe just make a note for yourself, or feel free to share that in the chat if you want to. It'd be great. People would love to hear how you came across it. And what sparked your curiosity as well.
Um, Hello.
Hi, Jairaj.
Yes. So I was in a like it was a workshop for developing counseling skills for adolescents, and we had a facilitator from US, Dr. K.U. Joshi, and I heard the words creative hopelessness. And this, you know,
Yep.
conundrum sparked in me. You have to be creative as well as hopeless. How does that work? So that's how my journey began.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So this is, I think, where we all start. And I imagine that you're all have got to this point already. You know, why else would you be here? So what happens next? Well, I think we kind of shift forward into this apprentice-like stage where we start to know the basics. So I remember from that point forward, I went on my first workshop in London with a guy called Joe Curran, who some of you may know. And it was an ACT for PTSD workshop. And I really liked it. You know, he was a great facilitator. And that facilitator, you know, when you have a good trainer, a good facilitator, it can build your interest in the model, can't it? Um, and then I started to go on more courses. I started to read more things, listen to more podcasts. Went to my first ACT chapter conference in London, maybe I think it was about 2012, 2013, something like that. And then went to my first world conference in Berlin in 2015, I think. So you go through this phase, I think, of yeah, I like what I'm reading here. I like what I'm trying out. I know the basics, but it still feels very new, very early days compared to like maybe other models that you've been using that you've got to know. Um, this is a phase where I see probably a lot of people integrating different things, like maybe people integrate a bit of values work into the work that they're doing, or they integrate a piece of acceptance work or some diffusion work into the work that they're doing. And I think this is a natural and common way that people develop. And I think that's okay. I think that works. I think that's kind of how a lot of people are learning and practicing and developing doing that. Okay. So where do we go from here? What happens next? Stuck. Hmm. Now, this is a maybe a strange choice of words I can appreciate. How could stuck be a developmental stage? And I sort of toyed with this word, but I've landed upon it because I think it can describe something of a common experience here. So I think learning is an interesting process. Learning, improving, and developing. It's struggle is a natural part of it. Um, you know, when I'm learning things, I can often feel interested, excited, um, optimistic, um, and um, I can feel scared. I can feel confused. I can feel ashamed. You ever notice that experience of being in supervision and you're working through something with a supervisor and you land on something, you discover something useful. And on the one hand, you're like, okay, great. Yeah, I feel like some weight has lifted. I've got a new direction. I can't wait to go and try that out with them. And then what quickly follows is, why didn't I think of that myself before? And then, you know, your mind can start to give you a hard time, thinking like you're not very good or embarrassing, or gosh, what does my supervisor think about me? And I think that's a pretty typical and common experience when it comes to supervision and it comes to training and it comes to learning. It's a struggle. It's an emotionally mixed experience. So in this stage where we're feeling stuck, it's not that we don't know anything. it can often be that we know lots of different things and we don't know where to start or what to choose. Like we might have learned about the ACT matrix. We might have learned about the DNAV model, the choice point, the hexaflex. And we've got these different options in front of us. And we can be sat there with a client going, which one do I use? And it can start to feel overwhelming and clunky. It's a stage where, on the one hand, what you're doing might be adherent to the ACT model. Like you might do a diffusion exercise when you notice fusion. Um, and we could say, yeah, that's the model. You know, you've got fidelity to the model when you do that. But when it comes to being competent, it involves not just adherence to the model, but a applying things skillfully. And applying things skillfully, I think, has a lot to do with timing and um, judgment of what's happening, being able to be sensitive to the context in front of you. And I can remember multiple occasions where I was doing something that looked like it was adherent to the model, like a tug of war exercise. And I remember this gentleman coming in saying he was unhappy in his marriage. Um, he was suffering from depression. And I had him stand up in the room with me and engage in this tug of war exercise. Um, and throughout, he was looking frustrated, disappointed, confused. But I kept going. And then afterwards, he reported how unhelpful he had found it. And he didn't come back after that session. And then another similar occasion comes to mind where I'd, not long after, I'd been on a workshop. And in that workshop, it was about shame. And they talked about how um, that people, when they often feel overwhelmed by shame, they can often like become really shut down, deactivated, and things are so flat in effect that it becomes difficult for people to engage with you. And so, something that can be useful to do is to have them stand up and start moving their body. And this can activate the autonomic nervous system in a way that makes it easier for them to engage. And so I decided that following week to do it with a client who was coming in to see me again, who was feeling quite low and depressed. Um, and at the end of that, he reported back just how awkward and confused he had felt, and he felt quickly disengaged, and he quickly disengaged as well. And so some of the learning that I take from both of those examples is that we're at the very to begin with, what I think I was doing was that I was trying to do act to them rather than do act with them. And so I was reaching for a technique, an exercise that I thought I could try out with the hope that it would be helpful. But what I hadn't learned to do by that point, I don't think, was learn to pay attention to context and function. And so I wasn't seeing those underlying principles and using those things as my guide. I can imagine you each have your own version of this, your own examples of where you've reached for something in an exercise or a model and it's not landed or worked as well as you would hope or like. Um, Something that kind of looks and sounds like act, but it just didn't kind of flow right. And that's probably, I would say, because like my examples, it lacked some sensitivity to what was happening in that moment for that client. There are some common mistakes that I think we have as ACT therapists. There was even a paper written about it in 2015 called The Common Clinical Mistakes of ACT Practitioners. some of the things that mentioned in that were like over talking, trying to explain act processes um, rather than doing the work, overusing metaphors, going too fast, doing creative hopelessness once at the beginning of a session, um, thinking that might be all that it takes, um, getting drawn into client stories and content and responding to those things quite frequently. I was saying when we were looking at the apprentice stage a moment ago that this is often a stage where people are taking pieces of act, like values work or acceptance work. Um, and yes, I will share a link to that paper. I'll make a note of that and I'll send that out in the follow-up email. Um, the first author on that paper, I think, is Martin Brock, um, and it's in the JCBS journal. So yeah, I was saying in the apprentice stage that it's common that people will draw techniques and exercises from the ACT model and integrate it with the work that they're doing. And I see a lot of CBT therapists doing this, or emotion focused therapists doing this. And while that is like common and okay, I think, for getting started, I think it also naturally takes you to this place where you get stuck because there are also some stark philosophical differences between these models. Like the if we look at one of those philosophical differences is that in CBT we think of things mechanistically, that that people are like machines and thinking is like a part of that machine, and that when people suffer, in part it's because the thinking has gone wrong. And we call it maladaptive or dysfunctional when we're looking through a CBT lens. And that's a sort of mechanistic way of thinking philosophically. And that lacks consistency for an ACT way of working because ACT is aligned with functional contextualism. And we don't, in that approach, see people as being like machines with parts that need correcting or fixing, but rather um, it's the acting context that people learn things and that history follows us around. And it shows up in the here and now, continuing to participate and influence us in strong ways. So there's no faulty thought. Nothing is maladaptive or dysfunctional. It all makes sense when you know someone's learning history and response patterns. And so this can lead to this stuckness because you're trying to work two philosophies alongside each other. You're trying to work two models inside and outside each other. Okay, so that's the stuck phase. What comes next? Shaping. Something I'm calling shaping. That this is a stage where you start to feel like your skills are improving, that you start to feel like you understand it at a deeper level. Um, and I think that this often happens for people when they start to take advantage of more opportunities to practice things with observation and feedback. That, like reading about ACT, listening to podcasts about ACT, going on sort of short form courses about ACT, they'll get you so far, but it's a sort of often passive way of learning. You're watching and you're consuming, and it to get through this sort of stuck into the shaping phase, I think what often needs to happen is that we need to do role plays and we need to have people watch our sessions. And those two formats allow someone else to feed back to us. Yes, we can like learn a lot by recording those things and watching them back ourselves. And of course, we all there are all edges to what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And somebody else can give us a different perspective, very valuable perspective. And so, like, deliberate practice in both individual supervision and peer consultation has been really significant in my development here. And when I say deliberate practice, what I mean is it's sort of targeted practice of a specific intervention. It's repeated, it's tracked. So it's quite often, like in supervision with people, something that people tend to practice is the way that they do creative hopelessness, because they're often trying to explain it to people rather than like put people in touch, experience of control. And that can be something that benefits from repeated practice. And through that repeated practice, they then start to discover um, the new things, things that I think often can't be discovered when you're just thinking and talking about it. This is where the Portland model of peer consultation is a very useful framework and guide. I think, these role plays and these video session feedbacks are, yes, uncomfortable for us. We don't often jump at those opportunities. We have hesitation with them. Um, we don't want to be seen to be getting it wrong in front of people. But they do open up amazing learning opportunities. Okay. And then what's the fifth stage? Well, it's a stage that I'm calling embodied, a space where you feel and like not only are you shaping the work, but the work starts to flow in a way, like there's a rhythm to it. And you feel like you're responding with presence, creativity, and you can see that impact more frequently, more often. When I'm watching people and I get a sense that they're operating in this space, I see them moving and intervening much more slowly, taking time. They're very, very present with their client in that moment. They look like they're not in a rush to get anywhere, and they're letting go of that need to know what happens next. Um, and they're paying close attention to that context and that function. It's something of that shift, I think, between from trying to do act to somebody to doing act with somebody. You might say that the practitioner is observing what the client is saying or doing, verbally and non-verbally. They're reading functions of that. They're responding to them in a way to try and shape behavior. And then they're waiting. They're waiting to see what happens. They're observing again to see how that is functioning for them. And then they're choosing their response again. I think practitioners, when they're here, have learned to see themselves as part of the context. They're not just thinking about the client, what their relating patterns are, what their overt patterns are, but also paying attention to their own experiences showing up in the room. What am I feeling here in this moment when this client says or does this? And so there's this interaction back and forth. You're shaping the client's behavior, the client's behavior is shaping yours. Um, I don't mean like when I say that, the client's behavior is shaping yours, that therapy is a space for you, the therapist, but rather both of you are having emotional reactions to what the other person is doing. Um, and what you do with these emotions is key, is significant. I have feelings of anger, frustration, sadness show up in the moment. And sometimes we carry around with us rules that our feelings shouldn't show up into the therapy room. And I get that. Like, and our feelings, our experiences can be really powerful, useful sources of information. Like a client I've been working with who had a very serious neglect in his childhood, um, to the point of no one being interested in him and like a padlock put on the fridge so he couldn't actually get food and was hungry almost the entire time. And like listening to his story was just evoked, intense sadness in me. And something I was also aware of as I was feeling that was how I'd understood from him no one had borne witness to that, and no one had tried to connect with him on the sadness that he had felt at that time and was continuing to feel. Um, and so, you know, I was able to then use my sadness and share and express that in a way that helped to connect with him and helped him, I think, to be seen in that moment. It's a hard place to get to, when you see therapists or trainers doing this work and you admire it, you might think, how do they do that? How are they working like that? And it might feel like out of reach, elusive, not quite sure how to get there. But I think it just does take time. It takes practice, and it takes particular kind of practice where we're moving through these stages. Okay, that's the five-stage model of how I've learned to kind of see this developmental path. Okay, but hopefully it gives you a sense of something here. How are we doing for time? 3 minutes. Okay. Just for a couple of minutes here, I'm going to invite you just to think about a stuck moment, a recent stuck moment with a client in a recent session where you felt like you were losing your rhythm or confused, unsure what to do, feeling anxious. Take a moment just to sort of place yourself back there, remembering what happened. Just take a moment to notice and describe your experience to yourself. What was showing up for you? And as you notice this and describe this to yourself, see if we can explore like a potential helpful question about it. Like, are you aware of anything you might do differently if this situation were to arise again? It's okay, I'm not asking you to say that out loud or share that, just for yourself. It's okay if you don't know, because not knowing is useful information as well. Like it shows you that you're sort of at the edge of what you know at this point in time with that. And that can be an opportunity to discuss it with someone, get that alternative perspective. Okay. Does anybody have any questions at this point or any reactions to what we've just been talking about? Feel free to put that in the chat or unmute yourself.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, hello.
Hi, I'm Julia. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Um,
meet you.
so with ACT, it's like not less of like a protocol and like I want to follow protocol because I liked when I learned CBT or something, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to like maybe like incorporate ACT in my mental personal life, and then kind of be the vibe of the ACT therapist. But I'm not sure like if that's what being competent looks like, or if like having tools will be the competence. Like,
Mm.
so like when you see a good ACT therapist, like is it like a vibe that you're looking for, or is it like the tools that you have? Like what is the thing?
It's a great question. It's a great question. There are structured competency measures around, like the ACT fidelity measure, and there's the core competency rating form, self-assessment. You can find both of those things on the ACBS
Yeah,
website,
yeah.
or if you Google them. So they can be a start. Like you can look at a session that you've just had and go through those measures and try and answer them as best as you can. Of course, it's not the most reliable way, we're looking at it through our own eyes rather than someone else's or a group. So those things can guide you. Um, but like I was saying earlier, I think you really need that feedback from somebody else
I
to
see.
help you with
Okay.
that. Like for example, the app fidelity measure, it's really advised and designed to be used by um, someone else with you, someone who knows the app model very well. Um, as is the app therapist rating scale used in the VA in the US, that they're tools to use in combination with somebody. I think it's very hard to assess your competency reliably,
Yeah.
independently on your own.
Okay. It's just hard to find a supervisor
Right.
in the US. So, um, it'd be
So that's
wonderful
the
if
other
there were more people
challenge.
like you. Yes.
Well, if
Thank-
you are a member of ACBS, they do have a
Yes. Yeah.
free peer group supervision that happens
Sure.
twice a week. And that it's a Portland model, so it's role play practice rather than case discussion. And if you feel brave enough, I would highly recommend going along
Yeah,
and
I went. It was great. It was just
oh,
7
was
in the
it?
morning. So,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, so, but it was really great. I'll definitely wake up and sleep early. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Joe Raj.
One of the things I struggle with is the thing is ACT is the distinguished feature being we can go anywhere with in the hexaflex. We can also like begin with the being in contact with the present moment or pulling up on the values, cognitive diffusion. But I get confused as to what would be the best way to do right now for the client.
Yes. Hmm. I think you're not alone. And I think that points to that maybe what would start to help you is less trying to get clear about what the right exercise or process is to target from the hexaflex, but probably more learning to spot context and function in front of you. So I would say practice functional analysis. And when you practice functional analysis, like you can do that in a way where after a session, you're drawing out your functional analysis to illustrate that picture of, what are the behavioral patterns that we're seeing here? What does that lead to? What are the relating patterns inside that hexaflex? Like, what are they fusing with? What experiences are they trying to control or avoid? So the next time you go in, it gives you some idea of what to expect. Um, and like that kind of reflection on what's been happening in the room can help you then when you're reflecting in, can help you to reflect in the moment more easily when you practice that. Does that help, Jairaj?
Yes, it really does. And that is, you pointed it out explicitly. I am having difficulty with the function of the behavior and the RFT. I need to get more acquainted with the stuff.
Right, yeah. And there's some great literature around, like if Nicholas Tornecki has, spent the last however many years trying to provide work available about this. And so he started off writing the ABCs of human behavior. Then he wrote Learning RFT. Then he wrote Metaphors in Practice. And now he's just published another book called Functional Analysis. And so I highly recommend the stuff that he produces because it's good to follow. It's coherent, it's consistent, and yeah, recommend it.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, Jim. Can I ask a quick question?
Hi, Kale.
Hi. I this is really interesting, kind of the looking at the path in this way, and it brings up a lot. But I guess the question I had is in a lot of people kind of approach me and my team because I'm the only one who kind of uses ACT in any way. And it got me thinking about this approach and how other people perceive ACT therapists and kind of I think it was Julie who kind of said about the vibe of an ACT therapist. I
Mm.
guess my question would be how would you go about um, setting up like a peer-led group when there
Right.
is no access to it, I guess already there because the NHS is a beast of an organization and very tricky to start anything new. So I guess
Yeah. So are you thinking locally, an in-person
local,
thing?
yeah, if possible, yeah, because I think there's something nice about that.
Yeah. So I think a good place to start would be through the ACBS community. So we have in Birmingham where I live, we have a group that meets once every other month, and it's a peer consultation group that we do for 2 hours. How we formed that was at an ACT conference, and so we met other people through ACBS chapter conference. So I would like post on the ACBS listserv within the on the UK and Ireland listserv for you in particular, of course. Um, wherever anyone lives, you can do this. If hopefully there's a local chapter for you, and just say where you are, what you're interested in it. See if anyone else wants to join you. And arrangements can start up that way. Um, if you're feeling like this and wanting it, good chance other people are wanting it as well. Um, so I think that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Hmm. And there'll be, you're in Scotland, aren't you? Um, that I know there are other people in Scotland, and so I know it depends how close people are, but you know, I think you'll find people. Um, hmm.
No, it's always the same thing with the NHS is anything to do with here, anything. There's a whole load of quite right, but uh, data protection things to go move through. So when we talk about peer supervision, it has to be within either the same trust or no patient discussion. But I think there's something about the Portland model or this idea of role playing rather than bringing a case discussion might be a really good use of that.
Well, exactly. So then you're doing the doing bit, which I think helps you shift from stuck to shaping.
Hmm.
Um, it's that practice that takes you from just that passive consumption of the act model to I'm doing something, people are seeing it, they're giving me feedback. I'm learning through practice and doing and discovery. Um, and I think that's what helps you to get a better sense of being able to shape the behavior in the room.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's good.
I'm going to share with you 6 growth practices that I think I've seen help therapists develop their knowledge and skills. One is practicing act from the inside out. Um, what I mean by this is, doing it on yourself, bringing it into your personal life. Um, and when you get to see the benefits of that, it can be really reinforcing, really powerful. So I would have no doubt that my personal practice of psychological flexibility has helped me to be a more present and patient father. I can see that. Um, and maybe you guys have seen how personal practice has benefited you as well. It's what we call the heart of act as opposed to the head or the hands. Where you're embodying those personal qualities. Um, and you're doing it in your personal life, I think it then helps to bring it into the therapy room as well. Another growth practice is thinking about how you support clients to change. Um, it's a lot to do with, I think, kind of tackling avoidance. So, do you ever feel like you're working harder than your clients? Yeah, I know I do. Um, and this is a pretty common experience, I think. And actually, what I would say here is that it's not that clients aren't working. Clients work hard too, just in different ways to what you're hoping they will do, different ways to what the ACT model invites them to do. They're working hard at ruminating, worrying, self-criticizing, seeking reassurance, escaping, problem solving. It's the wrong kind of work to give them the results that they want. And it's why I will ask every session right at the beginning, what do you want to work on together today? To invite that choice gives us a nice sort of compass point that's that consistent. And it's a good way of helping us focus on the change that needs to happen. Another way I would say is seeing what you can do to assess what you do, track what you do, and refine and modify what you do. This is the deliberate practice element. Um, and this is where role play and being able to give and get feedback happen. Um, and I know there are barriers to it, like time, like cost, but some of the things that you said so far can show that interest that is there. And so, yeah, I really sort of encourage you to sort of take advantage of those opportunities because I think they're really, really powerful and useful when it comes to growth. I've already said this one, practice functional analysis. Um, this is our tool for assessing the landscape before we start intervening, before we start painting. Um, we use that functional analysis at the start, and we can use it throughout as well to guide the work that we're doing. Stops us sailing off in the wrong direction, helps us to be more precise with the work that we're doing. Um, a helpful functional analysis will also see what's missing. When I put things down on paper, I can see what I don't know as well as what I do know. And I can say, does this look coherent? Does this fit together? Does this make sense? Um, Learn to handle complexity. Um, Complexity is normal, of course. Um, People's behavior can look chaotic. It can look, we can experience it as confrontational. We can experience it as distant, where people are withdrawing. Um, but yeah, this is where like supervision and peer consultation, again, I think are crucial and key. They help us learn how to handle complexity better. And then embed reflective practice. Um, when I think of reflective practice, I don't think it's just thinking a lot about something, but it's learning to ask good questions about what's happened. Um, for example, what was I avoiding when I sped up in that moment with that client? What might I risk if I stay silent for a moment longer when this is showing up for this client? Reflection can be quite concrete in this way, and when you take time to write it down, can be quite eye-opening, liberating, in fact, I think. Okay, so there's 6 growth practice ideas that I've noticed been helpful for me, helpful for other people that I support. And I'm going to finish up by sharing something that I am doing at the moment, which you may be interested in. And I'll tell you briefly about it, which is an advanced ACT training program that I offer that goes over 6 months. And it's for therapists who feel that they're in that stuck phase, want to shift forward into sort of shaping, becoming more embodied practice. And people that go through this program, done it twice now, and we've got a third group starting in January. Um, and I've got spaces available in that should you be interested. Is that they really find that they're building their confidence with it. Within it, we do that practice, deliberate practice stuff. People get support and feedback. They feel like they're learning to handle complexity better, and we do practice functional analysis quite a bit. Um, and so it involves video lessons, basic curriculum. We do weekly group coaching. There, you submit videos of your work and get feedback on that. And it's, there's a lot of reflective practice going through it. Um, yeah, weekly on, and it's just a small group of 5 people. And so if you are interested in that, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to a page where it gives you a lot more detail about what this program involves. It's a 9-module curriculum over 6 months. Um, and that's the web address as well. And have a read of that if you're interested. And if at the end of it you feel like, yeah, I'd like to see if that's a good fit, then you can just book a call with me, and we can have a chat to talk about that through.
Jim, I wanted to volunteer some before it's over. One of the things I discovered through that brief reflection is
Yeah,
when I'm stuck as opposed to in shaping where I feel like I have where I can find myself. When I'm stuck is when I've gotten in my mind worrying about certainty of diagnosis instead of paying attention to process.
right.
And so it kind of keeps me stuck between, overthinking, over talking, trying to figure out. And of course, as you know, with anxiety in particular, there could be lots of different diagnoses could apply, but the underlying processes are the same, And so I
Yeah,
think that's a point of getting stuck. And so that was just useful, that brief kind of reflection to me. So I appreciate that.
fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of something I heard Steve Hayes say once, which was that you only get stuck in the act model if you get stuck. And so you're noticing and sharing something there that was like, way you got stuck in that moment, what you got stuck on. Um, and that's a really useful thing to kind of notice and observe, because then, right now I'm noticing that, like, it gives me an awareness that now I can respond to with choice. Unless it's inside your awareness, you can't respond to it with choice. Just one final note as well. I made a particular point of calling it embodied, like this end stage, rather than expert. I considered that for a moment, because some developmentals talk about expert. I have a little bit of a problem with it. Um, like, I'm not just being coy when I say this, but like, I don't think it kind of sits with the sort of humility that I think is helpful to this work. Um, And I don't think it's an arrival point. I don't think people get to expert and then that's it. Like you're only as good as your last session or as your last move in the last session. You know, it's an behavior is an ongoing thing. You're doing something or you're doing something else. And so like you can be in embodied and then you can be right back in stuck. It's a moving thing. And there's no arrival to it. And that's what psychological flexibility is. You know, that's what we're asking our clients to behave to help them. Um, and I think it helps us let go of like some important and useful things as well. So yeah, there you go. That's that take on it. Any other questions?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jim. I have a question, but it's a little bit longer than hours maybe answering. So
Okay.
maybe I will write you, and
Yes.
I want to ask you something about how maybe we will create a new model with practice as a physician. I'm really interested during my practice lots of years. I wanna add psychologic approach because psychobiosocial approach is important for family physician.
Hmm.
So I need to improve my psychologic approach parts. So I'm really anger, and I'm really wants to deep this subject.
Hmm.
Maybe I want to keep in touch with you, and also Ray Owen. I'm
I saw him on
student.
the screen. Oh, there he is. Hello, Ray.
Yeah, also I'm student Ibrahim Bilgen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm lucky also, and we met each other different conversation and different presentation last year. So I will write you because I don't
Yes,
want
please
to.
do. Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I will
anyone,
write.
if you want to write to me about any of this, please do. And I'm happy to
Thank
answer your
you.
questions and get
Thank
back
you
to
for
you.
your kind presentation. It's very helpful for us. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. No? Okay. All right. Well, I will thank you for being here. And I hope that's been helpful. I know it's a big topic and you know, the answers are tricky. And so I wish you all the best. And yeah, take care. Hope to see you again.